Welcome to Ponca City Public Schools Board Wrap-Up Show. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, and it is our monthly visit with Superintendent Shelley Arrott. And it is a wrap-up, a complete wrap-up of this month's Board of Education meeting. There were a lot of items on the agenda. Superintendent Arrott, thank you for being here.
Oh, good to be here, Sean. How are you?
Very well.
Good.
And this is an opportunity for you to really get educated on the items that were on the agenda, things that were discussed, and get some clarification, some better understanding, a better understanding of some of the items that the school board discussed and faced and dealt with at the monthly school board meeting. So we'll get started right off. Wonderful presentation, Pohai Youth Traffic Court. This sounds very interesting. This is an actual traffic court.
It is. It is an actual activity that we have at our high school, and something that we're going to start doing at our board meetings is we are going to have a student group come and present to the board, short presentation, 3 to 5 minutes, just to inform the board and the public of some of the activities that we have in our schools. And plus it gives our students the opportunity to gain some public speaking time. So the Pohai Youth Traffic Court is a real court, but it is manned by not real attorneys, by student attorneys, a student judge, a student bailiff, and actually our SROs lead the student traffic court. And basically how this can help a student that's younger than 18 is if they get a minor traffic violation, they can attend student traffic court for a certain number of weeks and write a report about what they learned, and that traffic violation then doesn't remain on their record.
Oh,
now,
wow.
Once they're 18, then they go to real court.
Right.
But it's a good experience for our students. There's 9 of them who comprise the student traffic court, and then our students spend several weeks in student traffic court, and then they write a paper, and it takes that traffic violation right off the record.
That is exciting.
Health
That is
insurance.
really exciting.
And plus it's good for our kids too.
Yeah, really, absolutely. Attendance Awareness Month. Now, we see the signs are all over town. They're
That's right.
all of the schools right out in front of the Board of Education building, as a matter of fact. Attendance Awareness Month, and this is something that Ponca City Public Schools really getting heavily involved in this initiative because it is extremely important, and identifying where there's a challenge and where there's a need, and really getting on top of that. Tell us about Attendance Awareness Month and what was discussed at the meeting.
Okay, well, September is deemed as Attendance Awareness Month, and the reason that we have Attendance Awareness Month is to educate our parents, because in this nation, and Ponca City is no exception, chronic absences are an issue, and they can lead to poor academic performance and even to school dropout.
Yeah.
And what parents don't understand is that if a student misses 18 days of school in a school year, that's considered chronic absences. And if you think about this, we have 9 months in the school year. All they have to miss would be 2 days per month, and then they would be chronically absent by the end of the school year. So we want our students to have every opportunity to be successful, and we don't want them to drop out, obviously. And a lot of the issues have to do with misinformation, because some of our parents think that chronic absences only have to do with unexcused absences. No, that's not true. Doctor's appointments are excused, but if you have 2 a month for 9 months, that's going to lead to chronic absenteeism. Another myth is that parents think that maybe attendance isn't as important in the primary grades, only in the secondary years.
Well, then that's something I was going to ask you about, because that is a misconception that I had, and that I think a lot of folks have, perhaps you too, is that the chronic absenteeism is more of a problem in the later grades, but actually it's in the younger grades when these kids are at a very tender time in learning.
It's a vulnerable time in their learning, because in those primary grades is when they are developing those foundational skills. And if you don't have the foundational skills, you can't be successful
Is the
in secondary learning.
Is the psychology of that you know the younger kids A lot of folks are like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It's kindergarten. It's first grade. It's.
Well, let me tell you where we have our biggest issue with attendance, and it happens to be kindergarten. And let me tell you why. Because pre-K is not mandatory. It's not compulsory. So parents think that they don't have to attend. Now, in our district, we typically have a waiting list for pre-K. And if students are absent, unexcused, more than 10 days, we'll typically talk to the parent and say we want someone to be in the classes who will be at school. You know, if we want to serve the kids that will be here as much as possible. But I think probably the reason kindergarten's an issue, it's just parents are just getting used to going through pre-K, and they don't really realize this is real time.
Yeah.
It's compulsory. It's required by law. So kindergarten's our biggest issue, actually, throughout the district. Obviously, some of our issues are in our higher poverty schools, too. There could be all kinds of barriers. Parents are working.
Sure.
When it's time for kids to get to school.
Right.
Transportation issues, that kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. Attendance Awareness Month, extremely, extremely important. And something else extremely important that was on the agenda at the September Board of Education meeting. Somewhat of a clarification we're going to get from Superintendent Arrott on this, because recently you may have heard in the media, on the news, the funds, the education funds allocation per student, that was referred to as fake news. So we're going to get clarification, get kind of an explanation here from Superintendent Arrott about education funding facts. These are facts. This is not fake news. And Superintendent Arrott has the information for us.
Well, recently our patrons may have read in the paper that the House Common Education Committee Chair, Michael Rogers, out of Broken Arrow, had mentioned that per pupil decline in funding was fake news.
Oh.
And he had sent a link to his fellow lawmakers, to the State Department of Education, to the Oklahoma Cost Accounting System, which we call OCAS. And schools are very transparent. We are publicly funded, so we have to report all of our revenue into the OCAS system. Okay? So in the OCAS system, we report our state funding, our federal funding, our local funding, which will include our bond allocation funding, and that can't be spent for students or for teachers. So every dime that we have coming in goes into the OCAS system. So school funding's hard to understand,
Right.
And the fact of the matter is the state legislators are tasked with setting our state allocation.
Okay.
They have nothing to do with bond money. You know that has to be voted on by our community.
Right.
Building fund can't be used on students. So if all that money is combined, yes, it does look like that we've had an increase. So I shared some facts at the board meeting, and the fact of the matter is our state education funding has not kept pace with a few things. And one of those issues happens to be with the rising healthcare costs. The state gives us flexible benefit allowance to help us subsidize our employees' insurance, that's support and certified,
Sure.
or they're in lieu of if they don't take the insurance, and those costs continue to rise. Plus, enrollment has risen across the state of Oklahoma, and with that, we've also had some student needs issues rising. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But basically, since 2008, our state aid allocation has declined by $182 per student. So that's significant. When we're just talking about state aid, not every dime of money or revenue that we receive in the district. And just to give you a little bit, I want to get my facts straight. In 2009, our healthcare costs for public school employees in the state of Oklahoma happened to be $287.2 million, which was funded
Wow.
by the state. But every January healthcare costs rise by at least $50 to $70 per person. So in 2016, our healthcare costs were $416 million in the state, which is a difference of $128.8 million.
Wow.
That was not subsidized by the state.
So that's that money's got to come from somewhere.
Yes, so it comes from our general fund.
Right.
And these costs alone have left districts across Oklahoma with $25 less per student, just in the healthcare costs, the rise of healthcare costs that have to be funded.
Wow.
The next issue has to do with enrollment, and from 2009 to 2017, this is not in Ponca City, this is across the state. Our numbers have risen in student enrollment, 48,956 students, so right at 49,000 students.
Right.
In Ponca City, last year we saw a decline in student enrollment, and we're trying to determine if this is a trend. We thought it might be because we opened the pre-K center and it was an issue for transportation, but we see this year that our kindergarten numbers are down as well too. So our state aid is based on our number of students enrolled, so we're going to be hurting next year on our state aid just because our enrollment went down. Then across the state, our economically disadvantaged students have increased by about $90,000. 90,000 students. Our bilingual students has increased by about 32,000 students, and our special education students have increased by about 14,000 in a span of 8 years.
Wow.
And kids that have special needs require more specialization, and it takes more money. So, if our current state aid formula were funded as it was in 2009, we would need to see an increase of $325 million. So that's significant
That is
for the state of Oklahoma.
Very significant.
And as you know, the Supreme Court deemed the cigarette fee as unconstitutional, and there are 3 agencies that will suffer drastically if we don't go back into special session, and that's the Healthcare Authority, the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Mental Health, and they stand to lose nearly $100 million each because state aid is connected to federal aid. They cannot sustain. It would impact the services that they provide across the state, not only to school students, but to the population of the state of Oklahoma. And they provide vital services. So, as you know, Mary Fallon has announced or called for a special session that will begin on September 25th. I'm not sure that it's been formally announced, but she knows we need to go back into session to fund these agencies. And what we're unclear on is what is going to happen in special session. There's been some talk that, this is just from the media, so we really don't know, there's been some talk on both sides of the aisles that we could, our legislators could go in and impose a cigarette tax by a supermajority or 3/4 of the vote. There's been some talk of raising the gross production tax. There's been some talk of other state agencies taking a cut to help support those 3 agencies of 3%. There's been some talk of a fuel tax, but here's what we know: we can't continue to have the money that we don't have just pulled from different agencies or moved around. We know we need a new source of revenue to provide the services that our state needs and that our students deserve in Common Ed. Now, some interesting facts. If you think about Oklahoma's per pupil funding, on average it's $79.95 per student, $7,995 per student. Kansas, 20 miles to the north, their per pupil spending is $10,240, a difference of $2,245 20 miles to our north. And that hurts us
Yeah.
with recruiting teachers,
Sure.
families that might be moving into the area.
Right.
It's a real detriment. And overall,
All surrounding states.
the regional area, including Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas, we have the lowest per pupil spending. And on average, out of all those states, we're about $1,500 on average less per pupil than what we spend in Oklahoma.
Well, some sobering statistics and facts. There's a lot of hard decisions that have got to be made, and hopefully...
That's right. We're hoping our lawmakers will pull through and do what Oklahomans need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, part of the board meeting on the night of the 11th was the accreditation status for 2017-18. All is well.
All is well. Every year, schools have their accreditation status updated. And basically what this is the State Department of Education's quality assurance program to make sure that we are doing what our standards and statutes require. And this is no easy task. It starts on October 1, and we have to report everything from student numbers to correct certification of teachers, to ensure that teachers are teaching the classes they're certified for, to providing the correct amount of services. It's a huge ordeal. Transportation is accredited, everything. We call it reporting season in October.
Right.
Unfortunately, accreditation status is for 1 year. So last year in October, we did our accreditation report, and we received accreditation status with no deficiencies for this year. That's all of our sites, plus the district, and we get to start over this October. And you know, it's really good. Our one thing that I can say about our district, we're very transparent. We collaborate, we work together. It's a team effort. This is due to be certified by the superintendent by October 15th, and sometimes we are up to the minute just to make sure our information is accurate.
Wow, excellent. Some new board policies was voted on.
That's right.
And voted in.
That's right.
And
well,
can you tell us about it?
We discussed those last month
We did.
during the board
we went over
wrap-up.
a long list.
We discussed those in our board meeting last month too, because it's required by law that we discuss policy changes in an open meeting, and then if our public has feedback, we certainly accept that kind of feedback, but then we vote on them the next month. All board policies, any revisions or changes or new board policies that we discussed last month were approved.
Yeah. Now, if you missed last month's board wrap-up show, you can see that wrap-up show by going to the Ponca City Public Schools YouTube page. You'll find it. It's there. So the board works agreement, what was this and how did this go?
Oh, well, let me talk to you a little bit about BoardWorks. As you know, technology is increasing all the time. Our students learn differently than when you and I learned, Sean. Yeah. But we have a Promethean board in every single classroom, and it's an interactive whiteboard.
They are amazing.
They are amazing.
They're the most incredible whiteboards
They are.
ever.
But without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest hindrance for teachers when creating interactive lessons to demonstrate through the Promethean board is the time that it takes to create those lessons. And anybody that's been around public schools, you know that our teachers have very little time.
Right.
And BoardWorks is a software company that has developed these interactive lessons based on Oklahoma academic standards. So the teacher doesn't have to spend quality time needed. And what we want to do is we want to make the lives of our teachers easier.
Yeah.
And what was great about BoardWorks, it's a one-time cost. Every time the standards change, they update the lessons.
Wow.
And it was relatively inexpensive. When Dr. Pennington was our national AASA president, he got $50,000 for our school to use.
Wow.
And so we used that money to pay for board works. It wasn't $50,000, but some of the money that was left over, we used it to pay for board works, and it's money that we wouldn't have had if
Right.
Dr. Pennington had not have served as the AASA president. So it's going to be a great tool. We had principals and teachers come in and view the demo, and they all loved it. Now, we get calls from vendors all the time, and
Sure.
we have to be very careful with our money.
Oh, yeah.
But this was one that some of our principals had heard about. So I saw the presentation. It was really good, and we had a lot of buy-in, and our board wants to make things easier for our teachers as well.
Yeah.
And plus, it gives our students the opportunity to participate in interactive learning.
Yeah, and your teachers district-wide have got to be excited about board works.
They are.
And the bottom line is, the students are going to benefit, and they're going to get some fantastic
One-time
lessons.
cost, relatively inexpensive.
Those Promethean boards, my goodness, so different from, we just had chalk.
Yes,
Remember?
we
That's
did.
it. That's all we had was chalk.
So,
Times have changed. And speaking of changing times and what a, it's not coming up yet. They're doing a lot of the groundwork, but boy, that concert hall, they are working. Kyler Construction Group, if you drive by War Memorial Park, you see the construction going on behind the fence. It's a lot of activity. They even have, if you go to KylerConstructionGroup.com, there is a construction cam. You can actually watch the construction process. It's pretty exciting, and that facility is just going to be absolutely amazing. Can you give us an update?
sure. You know, a lot of people will ask me or other people in the district or board members, when are we going to get started on the concert hall?
Right.
It's been started for a long time, and
Yeah.
what the public doesn't see is that there is some intricate groundwork. There are 9 slabs poured, the duct work, everything is intricate. So go to the live cam,
Right, right.
the cam, and you can see what's going on. But what I wanted to share is that in the near future, people will start seeing the elevator shaft come out of the ground. So
Oh,
it's going to
wow.
be going up either this week or next week,
Yeah.
and it's going to look a little awkward because it's going to be 50 feet out of the air. So they're going to start
Wow.
seeing that elevator shaft. And just a little bit of trivia about the concert hall: it's a true music venue.
Yeah.
There's no stage. I mean, they're in the same room. So the performers are in the same room as the audience. So there's no proscenium arch
Right.
for a stage. So
Wow.
the sound quality is going to be so much better. And we are going to be the only public school in the state of Oklahoma who has a concert hall,
Wow.
a true music venue. It's going to be amazing. I'm
Yeah.
so proud for our community and our students.
Well, and yeah, and for the students, you know, too bad for those students that have graduated and moved on. They didn't get a chance to experience this, but you know, those students who have traveled to many different venues across the state at different high schools that have these type of facilities, and they come home. Now it'll be flipped around. They'll be able to
Right.
host
That's right.
other groups that come in and say this is state of the art, and
Well,
that's wonderful.
a lot of districts have performing arts centers
Sure.
where you can do plays or whatever. This is
Right.
a true music venue
Right.
for a band, for a full symphony orchestra, for a chorale, award-winning programs. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, the sound is going to be absolutely incredible. Well, one thing I wanted to add to our list of conversation here with the Superintendent Arrott is the ACT scores. The average higher than the state average. It's got to make
We
you
were.
smile when you get that
Yes.
report and you go, you know what, this is a good sign.
We were pleased. Now, last year we offered that examination for free to all juniors. Before, it was only given to college-bound students,
Right.
and we provided it free. So we had more students testing
Yeah.
who might not have been college-bound, who may be technical school bound or going to the military.
Right.
So we were certainly pleased that we remained above the state average.
Yeah.
Now, next year, or actually this testing year in April of 17, all of our juniors will take the test. And getting these results back tell us where our gaps are, where we need to fill holes in instruction, or it can also indicate our strengths. So yes, we're very pleased.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this month's edition of the Board Wrap-Up Show for Ponca City Public Schools. Every month, right here, you can watch the Board Wrap-Up Show with Superintendent Arrott, and we get all of the details, just as if you were there. You get an explanation of all of the information discussed and presented at the Ponca City Public School monthly board meeting. And it is always the second Monday of the month, typically. And Superintendent Arrott, thank you so much for a great show.
Thank you, Sean.
And,
appreciate it.
There we go. That's the Board Wrap-Up Show. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I'm Sean Anderson for Superintendent Arrott.